We don't like to judge too much, do we, Jace?
So we try not to.
What on earth were you thinking?
Exactly. That is what sometimes my face betrays me, because my face says, why the hell did you do that?
Right.
Hey everybody, it's John Lamerton here alongside my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jason Brockman. We are here for another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, where as always, it is our job to help you get more customers and make more money without just working harder. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this month's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast. John here with Jason, my business partner of 18 plus years now, Jason, isn't it?
It's been a long while, it has.
We're counting every day still. Anyway, we are here today not with one of our clients. So our usual setup for the AOB podcast is that we interview one of our 1%ers, and we're not doing that today. Instead, we have Mr. John Warrillow with us. Now, John is an author. He's written Built to Sell, which is one of my favorite books around business exiting, business sales, and particularly building a business that is sellable, regardless of whether you wish to exit. And The Automatic Customer, which, for those who've listened to the podcast for more than about 6 episodes will know, we always refer at one point or another to subscriptions, membership models. We love this business model, don't we, Jace?
We do indeed, yeah. We have several of our own, and obviously our 1%ers are one of those such businesses.
Absolutely. So welcome to the podcast, John. We're chatting away here. We better bring you in at some point, haven't we?
At some point. Well, good to be with you both.
Fantastic. It's great to be here, mate. So I wanted to thank you first and foremost for writing, particularly Built to Sell. And Built to Sell was my introduction to you. I listened to that book probably 6 or 7 years ago at a point in my own career where I thought I wanted to sell my business. I wanted to exit my business. And so I listened to Built to Sell and realized that my business was not ready to be sold. And I had quite a lot of work ahead of me. So I think I made a 2-year plan or something like that. Right, this is what I'm going to do to actually make my business sellable and exit. And by the end of reading the book and taking a lot of the actions, I realized I didn't actually want to sell my business, because I figured, what am I going to do once I've finished this business? I'm going to want to buy another asset. I'm going to want to buy another business, aren't I? Is that a common thing you find?
Well, yes, I think it is. I think there are a lot of reasons that people want to sell, but usually they're just frustrations, right? They can't get their employees to care as much as they do. You know, you can't punch above a certain threshold of sales or turnover. And you just say, well, hell with it, I'm going to sell. And then once you figure out how to bust through those barriers, you think, well, maybe I'm happy to just continue to run it for a while. And so, that's very common. It's funny. Occasionally I'll give speeches, less so these days, obviously, but before COVID, I gave speeches to business owners. And I used to start with this kind of classic line, which was, okay, can I just have a show of hands? How many of you want to sell your company? And nobody's hand would go up in the air for a lot of reasons. Obviously, people don't want to advertise that, but also very few people actually want to sell. And then I would ask a slightly different question, which was, how many of you would like to know you could sell your business when you're ready? And like every hand, of course, goes up in the air, because we all want an asset, right? We want to know we're building something, but it doesn't necessarily mean we equally, like you could want the value of your home to go up, but that doesn't mean you want to sell your home, right? You could want the value of your retirement plan to go up. It doesn't mean you want to retire. It gives us a sense of momentum and a sense of confidence when the value of our company, et cetera, is going up. So I think you're absolutely right. Your experience is probably not unusual in people who read the book.
Yeah, Jace, we had a little trip to Newbury, didn't we?
We did.
About 5 years ago now. And this was it was on this drive that I actually listened to your book, John. We were exploring a sale. So someone had approached us and said, I think we might be able to have a chat. We might be able to find a buyer for your business. So Jason and I said, well, we don't want to sell. We're not looking to sell. We're quite happy. This is our it's our golden goose. You know, why would we want to kill the golden goose? Well, let's just go and hear what they've got to say. And we sat in a room with these guys for about 2.5 hours. And we went all over the financials. We went over the infrastructure. We went through how replaceable we'd made ourselves. Could the business run without us? Does the business depend on us? And eventually these guys said, yep, we're confident we could get you a sale, and we think we could get you X amount. And on the drive home from Newbury to Plymouth, which is about 3.5 hours, 4 hours, Jason and I spent that money. We were on the golf course every day, weren't we? We had the villa in Marbella. You know, we'd spent that cash, hadn't we?
We certainly had, yeah. Well, again, we didn't really know what that value would look like, and as you say, we went on a fishing trip, really, more than anything else, to see what exactly it would be worth. And then when we'd heard what it was worth, it was like, well, this is changing things altogether, really. It's kind of, actually, we can have this lump sum up front, and then work out what the future holds after that, really, wasn't it?
Definitely. It's finding, as I say, it's that balance between owning the asset, and it is killing the golden goose, but having the cash up front, knowing you've got 5 years revenue up front and you never need to work another day in it again, versus, I guess, do you find, John, most people's exit strategy is feet first in a box, isn't it?
Well, yes, I think that is some people's exit strategy. Although I think, the pandemic has caused a lot of people to reevaluate. We did some research at Value Builder where we have people go and they complete a questionnaire, and we ask them about their business, and we compared and contrast people who completed the questionnaire before March of 2020. So when the pandemic was announced, and the 9 months immediately following that. So during the pandemic, I realize as we record this, we're still very much in the pandemic, but so we looked at a sort of before and during, and it was fascinating. The people who answered the questionnaire during the pandemic had moved forward their sell by date by 20%.
Oh, wow.
Meaning they were much, much more likely to want to sell their company. And the other thing that was really interesting about the data was that the appetite to pass down the business to their kids had dropped through the floor. It went from 18 or 19% to less than 10%. And again, it was quantitative research, so we don't know why, but our assumption is that, it's been so stressful for many business owners, in particular service businesses, that the idea of passing on this albatross to your kids is it's like a tantamount to child abuse. It's terrible. So people are saying, all right, I want to sell. I'm stressed. I want out, and I want to do it sooner than later. So I think you're right. There is a cohort of people that want to go out sort of boots first, as they say, die at your desk. But increasingly, I think people are saying, I want to have at least the option to get out sooner than later.
So this would be a nice little Facebook meme, wouldn't it? So pre-March 2020, it's the golden goose, and post-2020, it's the albatross.
Well, hopefully not quite as polarizing as that, but yeah, you could say.
But I mean, from our point of view, obviously we work with lifestyle business owners, and again, we're seeing that trend shift over the last 18 months towards the lifestyle matters more than it did 18 months ago. 18 months ago, it was the financial rewards. It was the building a big pile of money. It was building lots of assets that was important. And all of a sudden, that mortality reminder has kicked in. And actually, a lot of people have had a little taste of what it would be like to run a lifestyle business, to actually think, oh, actually, do you know what? Maybe we don't need the offices. Maybe we don't need the big house in the country. Maybe working from home could work for us. Maybe we could run a leaner business model. And I think so much is changing, and it will continue to change, I think, over the next probably 18 months to 2 years. But there's a definite trend towards less stress and more enjoyment.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've done research into the psychographics of SME owners. So why does somebody start a business as opposed to going to work at Procter and Gamble or Cadbury's or wherever people work these days? And what we discovered is that there are three types of entrepreneurs. Again, SME owners. The first and sort of most celebrated is the mountain climber, who is really achievement oriented. So this is the owner who's focused on top line turnover, who focuses on hitting those milestone of £1 million turnover, £5 million turnover. Like that's their that's what gets them up out of bed. And that's a relatively small segment of the SME ownership universe. The second group are called freedom fighters. And I dare say that a lot of your listeners fall into this bucket, where their primary motivation is not to become the next James Dyson, the next Elon Musk. It's to actually build a business that gives them the freedom they deserve and want and desire, right? So when that business reaches a point where, in order to continue to grow, they would need to bring on outside capital or sell part of it they choose to throttle back, slow down their growth, and maintain 100% ownership, because for them, independence and freedom trumps mountain climbing and growth, right? Yep. The third group are what we call craftspeople, who are motivated by mastery, meaning they actually don't really define themselves as an SME owner. They're a massage therapist, a copywriter, an electrician. They're primarily define themselves by their occupation. Mm-hmm. And they're motivated by mastery. So they want to be the best massage therapist, the best copywriter, et cetera. Not necessarily the most savvy business owner. So again, I think most of your listeners fall into the second group, the freedom fighter, that want the lifestyle associated with ownership, but not necessarily some of the headaches and that come with hypergrowth.
Absolutely. When you were going through that, the word freedom fighters just really resonated with me. It's that word freedom that I think comes up so many times. We've just done a new intake for our coaching club, the 1% Club. Within that, we do an onboarding questionnaire. Why have you joined? What are you looking to achieve? And that word freedom comes up again and again and again.
Isn't that interesting?
My question for you, John, around that is, with freedom fighters, they are building that business for themselves. They're building it, they're designing it around themselves and what they want, which is why they're shunning the outside VC money, which is why they're throttling back, which is why they're scaling in a direction they want to go to and saying no to things they don't want to. How would they create a business that is sellable and works without, or could run without them, when the business is built for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the quintessential question, right? Because oftentimes building an SME, small medium business, is actually a mirage. The aspiration is freedom. The person wants to feel free and independent, and in fact, they build a business that is undermining their freedom. They can't leave it at 5 o'clock and go to the pub and enjoy themselves because it's constantly on their mind. Yep. And that's the horrible kind of paradox of business ownership, is that for most people, they start a business for freedom and they find that once they're in it, it's anything but. And so it's a major, major challenge. I think the first step in this process of transforming your business into one that's less dependent on you is actually a kind of a philosophical shift. A lot of your listeners will be parents. And so I'd encourage you to think about the way you think about your job as a parent. For some parents, they aspire that their kids go to Cambridge or Oxford or some fancy school. But for most, I think, of us, we aspire as parents to bring kids into the world that will one day, not necessarily yet, but one day be self-sufficient and be able to kind of thrive on their own. And even when they're in their teenage years where they're in that horrible kind of in-between zone, we aspire that one day they'll kind of go on their own. I think if people listening to this took the same philosophy to their business and said, actually, the goal is not to hit the next turnover milestone. It's actually to create a business that's not dependent on me. That's the ultimate expression of a parent, is to see their kid go off in the world with their value system, with their philosophies, but not necessarily dependent on them every day. So that's a really challenging way to think. And it throws out everything we've been taught about SME ownership, right? Focus on the bottom line, profitability, et cetera, and changes the way we make decisions. Because again, you might give an employee a little bit of rope to make a mistake if the ultimate goal is to teach them to be able to work independently. In the short term, that might make your business less profitable, may fly in the face of everything that you have been told about running an SME, but that's what they need, right? Equally, I did an interview on Built to Sell Radio with a woman named Jody Cook, British lady based in the Midlands, I think. And she focused on building standard operating procedures, right? Those instruction manuals for her employees. And I asked her, like, why did you do that? That sounds like going through creating SOPs. It's a very process-oriented job. It requires a lot of attention to detail. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like the worst thing in the world to try to, systematize their business. And I said, well, like, why did you do that? And she said, well, if you're going to go to jail, wouldn't you rather go to jail for 3 months or 3 years? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And she's like, 3 months of hard work to create standard operating procedures, I can do. 3 years of an earnout being an employee of a company that buys my business, I cannot do. And so she sold her agency, marketing services business that usually would trade with an earnout where you accept a certain set of goals in the future. She sold without an earnout and got out 2 weeks after she handed the keys to the new owner. And the reason was she created these standard operating procedures to work so that her employees had the instructions of how to deliver the kind of service that Jody wanted to deliver. So it's a different way to think about your business as being the parent of your business as opposed to the CEO of your business. But I think it ultimately could serve a lot of your listeners.
You were nodding your head away quite a bit there, Jace. Does that hit home with you there?
Absolutely. It is that philosophical change, isn't it? Because actually you're a parent of the business, aren't you? You're a parent to most of the staff, in fairness, and you're a parent to the product that you're or the service that you're delivering. So yeah, it absolutely does. And at the end of the day, you are responsible as the parent for everything that kind of happens with the child. And I think if you can make that switch to the child flying in the nest, and equate that to kind of the business running itself, I think that's a real good analogy, to be fair. Yes.
Yeah. And we all know parents, obviously, who have trouble letting go, right? And who's still making the kids lunch and cleaning up after them and making and eventually you kind of they have to sort of, move on and find their own way. And so just philosophically, it's a different way to think about your job as the CEO.
I think just working with this parenting analogy here, any parents of teenagers listening to this will be familiar with the complete ineffectiveness of the procedure of nagging and how it just doesn't work, does it? And so it is with our teams, actually nagging them to do things the way we would do it, because that's ultimately the biggest problem, is team members not doing things the way we would do it, not thinking the way we would, not acting the way we would. That's why you need those SOPs. That's why you need that decision-making framework. So it's not here's the answer, but here's how you could arrive at that answer and arrive at the same answer I would.
Yeah, I love this analogy of nagging teenagers. I'm a big believer as a manager and a leader of something called the yesable question. Have you heard of this term before, the yesable question?
No.
All right. So we all have employees who think it's their job to come dump their problems onto our lap, right? So customer complains, product breaks down, the truck gets hit by, whatever. The problem occurs, and all of a sudden they kind of come screaming into your office and say, "We've got this terrible problem. What do I do?" And it happens to all of us, I think, as leaders. The yesable solution is to push back on that employee and say, "Look, I'm happy to give you my perspective, but what I want you to do is go away and come back and frame this question in a way that I can answer either yes or no. And I want you to go away and kind of think about the alternatives, do a little pros and cons list of 3 or 4 different possible ways to solve this problem, and then basically recommend which of those 3 or 4 that you think makes the most sense in your shoes, and phrase it in a way that I can simply answer yes or no. Now, what does that do for the employee? It forces them, obviously, to act like an owner, to think like an owner, come up with a set of potential options, and pose it in a way that they're taking ownership of their approach. Now, it still gives you decision-making authority, right? You can still say, actually, no, I don't think you should do it that way. Do it this way. But 9 out of 10 times, as you can imagine, the employee comes back with the right answer, right? And you can simply say yes and move on. And they are much more empowered to answer it the next time. So I got this from a Dutch guy, and I don't know if he's trademarked it, so I should give him credit where credit is due, but I just love the yesable answer. And I think it's a great way to get employees to start thinking like owners.
I love that. I think there's a few 1%ers. Certainly, we've had a few coaching calls in the past where they've gone, oh, they keep coming into me. They keep sending me emails. I get emails out. Even though I've defined a time to send me an email, 1 o'clock, they still send me emails during the day of all the things which are on their desk that they want me to answer for them. And I love this yesable question or yesable answer. I think that's a really great way of batting it back and getting them, as you say, to think about it as an owner and kind of come up with their own solutions. I think that's brilliant. And
get them to come up with 3 or 4 solutions and articulate those to you, right? So in your response back, say, tell me the range of options you've considered and which one you think we should go with, and phrase it in a way that I can simply answer yes or no. And that gives you a sense of, okay, they've considered 3 or 4 different things. They've done a bit of homework, et cetera.
It's becoming less of the authoritative boss dictating instructions and more coaching, isn't it? It's more almost therapy. You imagine a therapist doesn't give you any answers. He helps you find the answers by saying, why do you think that? What else have you considered? Right. What have you tried in the past? What makes you say that?
I love the fact that you started all those with the word what, because the word why and the word what act very differently in asking questions. So when you ask a question with the word why did you do it that way? It basically acts like a light switch being turned off for that employee. They feel judged, on the defensive, that they have to then therefore respond with their reasoning and defend themselves, right? That's what asking a question that starts with the word what does. If you start a question with the word what, that's what starting a question with the word why does. If you start a question with the word what, it acts like flipping on a light switch. There's a different side of the brain that gets accessed, which is the creative side of the brain, the problem side of the brain, that allows them to think about things. So what were the things that you considered in making that decision, or what impact did that decision have? Those are all opening the thinking side of your employee's brain. So I love that you're using questions that start with the word what, because I think those are the ones that really get people kind of thinking creatively and less like they're being judged.
Definitely. We don't like to judge too much, do we, Jace?
We try not to.
What on earth were you thinking?
Exactly. That is what sometimes my face betrays me, because my face says why the hell did you do that?
Right.
Can we talk? Let's pivot to the automatic customer. Let's talk subscription models. Mentioned earlier, it's one of our favorite models, and often we're chatting to 1%ers, particularly we're talking to service-based businesses. Mm-hmm. And these are the guys who are selling their time for money. And we're saying to them, look, get a subscription model in place, get a membership in place. Let's create some evergreen products here. And there's almost always resistance to that, because people think that won't work in my model. That won't work in my sector. I couldn't do that, could I? Now, I believe the subtitle of your book is something about any industry.
Creating a business, creating a subscription business in any industry. Yeah.
Have you yet to find an industry or a sector which cannot benefit from a subscription model?
I mean, there are ones that are harder, that require more creativity on behalf of the owner, more deep thinking about what is the value proposition, why do people buy from me? But I do believe that virtually any business can create some form of subscription revenue. And you might ask, like, why? I mean, obviously it improves the value of your company. It makes it much more predictable. And oftentimes you get an attached product, meaning when people have a subscription with you, it makes them much more inclined to buy other things from you. So it's all upside. It's a question of how do you do it? I think in a service business, one where you're selling time for money, the problem with that is that it commoditizes you, right? So I'm a graphic designer, let's say, and I charge 80 pounds an hour. Great. Well, now you've just effectively lumped yourself in with every other graphic designer on Fiverr, on Upwork, on every other, marketplace. And those are all erased to the bottom effectively, right? So then you say, okay, well, it's my reputation that precedes me. They want me and I offer great service. Great. Well, as long as you do that, then your business will never be one you can leave, right? Even for a holiday, let alone a month or a sabbatical or even sell. So what you need to do, I think, is productize your service, meaning brand it, name it like a thing, as opposed to genericizing yourself like I'm a graphic designer. Productizing it so it's a thing. I'm reminded of a podcast I did with a guy named Dave Kirpin. He had a social media advertising business, marketing services business, and they were on the treadmill of selling time for money and hourly rates. And it wasn't really much more than he and his wife in the business. They couldn't really get beyond that. And he decided to productize what he offered into the content credit or token system. I think it's called the content credit system. And instead of selling time, he offered credits for content. What he realized is his customers wanted not his time, they actually wanted social media posts and videos for their Instagram folder, and images and tweets, and all the end products that he offered were these sort of assets. And so he said, look, you can buy a bulk set of tokens. So this content set of tokens, and one token might be for a tweet, and 10 tokens would be a video, and 100 tokens would be a blog post. And you're going to buy them from me on an annual basis. If you ever want to increase the number of tokens you have, great. But we're just going to agree up front that you're going to buy these tokens, and that we'll do this, annually. So what has he done in doing that? Number one, he's differentiated himself. No longer is he charging by the hour. He's and lumping himself with every other marketing services. He's like, no, we have the content credit system. Number two, he's turned a negative cash flow into a positive cash flow cycle, because instead of charging by the hour and then sending the invoice after the fact, he's now charging up front for an annual allotment of tokens. His entire working capital is funded by his customers. And it's totally transformed his business. Last time I talked to Dave, they'd reached 54 employees. He sold the company last year for 8 times EBITDA. Like a fantastic exit. And again, I know that's not necessarily the goal of your listeners, but ultimately it was a fantastic exit. But in the leading up to it, he had a much, much, much more enjoyable company to run that didn't depend on him personally doing the work. And so I think it's about productizing and then creating that recurring revenue through a subscription model. It's
a common hang up I find with business owners, that they are focused, the business owner, not the customer, but the business owner are focused and stuck on, people want 3 hours of my time. They want my time. I sell my time by the hour. They're paying for 3 hours. They should get 3 hours. The customer doesn't want 3 hours of your time. They want the result of those 3 hours. And if you can deliver that in an hour and a half, even better. And if you can deliver it automatically via a product I can buy off the shelf and automatically install, happy days. It's a bit like the old story, isn't it, about the drill bit versus the hole. Nobody wants a drill bit. They want the hole. Well, actually, they don't want the hole. They want the hole to have a screw in it, and they want the screw to have a picture frame in it, and they want the picture frame to have a lovely picture of that family holiday they had, because what they actually want is the emotional attachment to that holiday they had 7 years ago. It's the end result that people genuinely want, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Definitely. So what are the common mistakes that people make when setting up a subscription business? Or a subscription arm to an existing business, should we say?
Yeah, probably the biggest is being half pregnant. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, look, if you give your customers the option of buying from you a la carte by the hour, on a transactional business model and on a recurring business model, and say like, whatever you would like, we will, we'd be happy to serve you in either way. Virtually every one of your customers is going to choose to buy on a transactional basis. Because if given the choice, most of us would prefer freedom, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing 6 months from now, a year from now. So you know what? I'll just buy your hourly rate over here. Nice to know that you have a subscription model, but really what I want is just to have this transaction. I want to buy 3 hours of your time because I want you to consult, whatever. And so it means that your subscription model will never get off the ground. And so I think, as hard as it is to talk about and to actually do, you kind of have to rip off the Band-Aid and go to your customers and say, look, we've done some soul searching. We've thought about our business model, how we can best serve our customers. And we've decided that we're going to do it in this way, this recurring way. Dave Kirpin doesn't sell his time and the content credit system. He sells just the content credit system. And again, I learned this the hard way. 20 years ago, I used to run a market research business. And I got the idea that we were going to transform it into a subscription model, like a Bloomberg, Thomson Reuters. And so we went back to our loyal clients. These were actually British Telecom was a client of ours at the time, but like big phone companies, banks, and we went and said, hey, we've got this subscription model over here, but of course we're happy to continue to serve you on consulting for you, but we've also got the subscription model over here. And 9 out of 10 people just kind of nodded politely and said, well, that's nice to know you have a subscription model, but we'll stick over here. And after probably a year of offering the subscription model, we probably had half a dozen subscribers, not enough to warrant changing the business model, not enough to really make. All we had done is like increase the complexity. Now we had to honor these subscription agreements, but also we had this, it was just a mess. And so ultimately I turned off the subscription model because it was just too, we couldn't get it to go. A couple of years go by and we kind of licked our wounds and said like, what did we do wrong? And how come we couldn't make it work? And we realized that we didn't like kind of burn the boats, as they say, right? Like we kind of wanted our cake and eat it too. And in America, they would talk about a baseball analogy. You can't steal second while you have your foot on first base. But in any ways, we basically made the mistake of trying to kind of hedge. And so we went at it a second time, a couple of years later, and we gave them the ultimatum. We went back to all of our best clients and said, look, we've done the thinking and we've looked at it, and the best way we can serve you is through this subscription model. And so we're no longer going to do business with you in this old way. Yeah. And it was funny, like in the beginning, people kind of, the first time around, people sort of placated us and said nice things, but didn't act. The second time around, they kind of got right up on the edge of their chair and said, okay, well, you need to explain this subscription model to me a little bit more. How's it going to work? How am I going to, what am I going to get for it? What are the billing terms? All of a sudden they leaned into the conversation because they saw that we were willing to risk our relationship effectively on it. And so they knew that was relatively courageous of us. And so it forced them to change their tune. Long story short, we got virtually all of our legacy customers over to the subscription. It became a much, much more scalable model. And ultimately we sold that company to a New York Stock Exchange listed, business. So it made a big difference for us. And so when I say give customers the ultimatum, I don't say it lightly. I realize that is a very, very difficult decision to make. And at the same time, I think it's going to be really hard to create a genuine subscription model without going all in.
Yeah.
Do you think that you weren't all in the first time you went out into Ask? Because it sounded there was perhaps a little bit of doubt. It was a kind of an idea that you didn't think, or
Yeah, the first time in that business, is that what you're
yeah,
no,
so it's the first time when you went to the clients and went, oh, we've got this subscription thing. It didn't sound like you were all in at that point.
No, and that was the point of my story. We were not all in. We were half pregnant. We were trying to have our cake and eat it too. Yeah, we were kind of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you subscribe? But oh no, we don't want to lose you, so we'll be happy to kind of continue to bill by the hour over here. Like we kind of wanted it both ways. And our customers called us on it, right? And said, like, you're not serious about this. right? And I don't want to pay for your year subscription up front. I'd rather pay, in dribs and drabs over here. And again, until you fully commit, I think it's going to be very difficult to get it off the ground.
We kind of did the opposite this year, didn't we, Jace, with our ugly duckling product. So we have got a subscription model within our sports betting business. You can pay £13 a month and you get access to our VIP tips. Fantastic. So Cheltenham Festival back in March, we promoted our VIP membership, £13 a month. And we did this purely, we intended never selling any of these products. We created a red herring product, just 4 days worth of tips, £20. So we deliberately priced. We weren't quite burning our bridges, but we made this deliberately unattractive product. It's a one-off, £20, and you're going to get 4 days worth of access. Or £13 a month, you can have 30 days worth of access, plus this, plus that, plus this bonus. Fantastic. 100 people bought the ugly duckling product. And we went, what is wrong with these people? Why are they paying us more? They could have signed up for the £13 a month service and then cancelled and still paid us less money. Those people didn't want a subscription payment. They wanted the security of knowing that I'm not going to be rebilled next month. And they were happy to pay 50% premium for 10% of the product. It's not an uncommon. I've heard similar stuff in lots of different directions. Yeah, given the choice, most people would choose the one-off transaction, right? But again, like if you think of Netflix, arguably the most successful subscription model of all time, you could maybe Disney Plus, you could put it in that. I mean, you can't just download one show on Netflix and pay £3 a month, or £3 for a show. Like they've said, no, it's either you're in or you're out. Yeah. And I think that's I've read strong cheese, but that's important. I've written about Netflix in my next book, Evergreen Assets, which might be out. No, it's not out when this episode airs. Next month, I promise.
Oh, cool. Congratulations. That sounds great.
The point I've made in there is around evergreen products, is around subscriptions, because Netflix have spent $43 million over the last 3 years creating original content. Now, they're not going to spend that sort of money. Did I say million? I meant billion.
You said million. I was going to say it must be more than
43 billion in the last 3 years, just creating original content, just creating those evergreen assets that they own and they control, purely based on keeping subscribers. And sure, they're going to bring some new blood in as well, but they've got 200 million subscribers paying anything from £6 to £20 a month. So keeping those subscribers means that next month or next year, let's go forward next year, they can happily commission billions of dollars of spend on new programming. They can buy up the best programming because they've got certainty of revenue next year based on the subscribers, because actually the more original content they create, the more valuable my Netflix subscription becomes to me, because I've currently got 20 shows on my watch list. If they keep adding original content, that becomes 25, and there's even less chance I'm going to leave.
Sure.
Which enables them to creep the price up every month or every year, doesn't it?
It does.
I can't believe I got my millions and my billions mixed up. I saw something the other day. 1 million seconds is 11 years, and 1 billion seconds is 3,400 years, or something like that.
Wow!
Just to show the difference between the two. So this brings us almost full circle, John, back to your third book, your new book, The Art of Selling Your Business. Now, this, you've said, completes the trilogy on your series. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, Built to Sell was about how do you create a valuable business, the automatic customers, about how do you accelerate the value of that business through recurring revenue. And the art of selling your business is really about how do you harvest the value you've created. So once you've got a valuable business, like how do you successfully sell it? How do you punch above your weight when it comes to negotiating? Because by definition, there's something called the 5 to 20 rule in M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And it means that the likely buyer for your business is going to be somewhere between 5 and 20 times the size of your business today. So if you're doing £1 million in turnover, it's probably somewhere kind of 5 to 20 million pounds turnover company is going to buy your business. It's like a David and Goliath battle, therefore, right? You're bringing a knife to a gunfight, and if you're not careful, you can get out negotiated, right? So the idea behind the book is to help small, medium enterprise owners, SME owners, to kind of punch above their weight when it comes to selling. Point out some of the kind of tips and tricks and gotchas, some of the mistakes to avoid in making sure you harvest the value that you've created.
That's fantastic. Where is it? Is it out yet? Is it available? Yeah.
It came out in the UK in February. I think it's on Waterstones, Amazon.co.uk. There's a bunch of places that you can get it in the UK. I think on Amazon.co.uk. What's that?
Are you on Audible?
Yes. Yeah, we're on Audible. Yeah.
Fantastic. For one monthly subscription or the 24 books a year plan you can get.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Jace, have you got one final question there?
What's the most effective tip that you'd give to someone who wanted to do less in their business than they are currently doing?
Yeah, it's probably to figure out your TVR. TVR stands for teachable, valuable, repeatable. And in particular for service businesses, it's to figure out what service offering that you have today, which you could teach employees to deliver. Number one, so that's the teachable. Valuable is, think of the opposite of valuable is commodity. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be a service that your customers derive a high amount of value from, in particular coming from you. There aren't 60 other providers in your local market for this. So that's valuable. Mm-hmm. And then repeatable goes back to the recurring revenue conversation we were just having. Is this something that your customers have a need for on a recurring basis? And so once you figured out your TVR, I think you can bundle that into a productized service and start to train your people to deliver the same degree of offering that you would. And that's really the first step in building a business that's not dependent on you. And so it's challenging because it means that you've got to jettison some of the things you're doing today. You know, a lot of lifestyle businesses are kind of an inch wide, I'll say that, a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning they offer lots of different services to just a few customers, right? Because customers like buying from them. They keep adding and asking them to offer more and more things. And pretty soon you've got sort of 3 clients that represent 80% of your revenue, and you're beholden to those people. And you're always constantly fearful that one of them is going to leave. The most valuable businesses and the ones that successfully get out from under their company do almost exactly the opposite. They sell just a few things to lots of people as opposed to selling lots of things to a few people. So if you want to think about philosophically what you're aspiring for, it's to sell just a few things to lots of people, and to identify what those few things are. Go through your TVR, teachable, valuable, repeatable. And that should allow you to kind of shortlist a few things to focus on.
Thank you.
That's really good. Thank you once again, John. For those listeners who would like to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do, where's the best place for them to go?
Head over to builttosell.com/ambitious. And we put together some gifts for your listeners. So there's the 9 subscription model checklist that you can download that'll give them a sense of which of the subscription models that might work for them. And there's a video series on the drivers of company value. So it's all just at builttosell.com/ambitious.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me.
So there we are, another episode in the can. How was it for you? Please let us know. However you listen to these podcasts, please leave a review on that platform. Let us know what we can do better, what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve to make this show even better for you. We'll see you next time.